Hi, my name is Diego, and welcome to Racket for Pythonistas. In this video, I will be explaining to you why I'm doing this and a little bit about my philosophy for these videos. So, when I was first learning Racket, I basically just wanted someone to show me the Python and then show me the Racket, and then I would figure everything else in between. But the reason for that is because I already knew how to program. So I already knew things like for loops, inheritance, and a lot of other things. And I basically just kind of wanted a quick guide into Racket using something that I was more familiar with. Unfortunately, there was really nothing at the time when I was doing it, but I'm hoping that in this video series that I can do the things that I wish I had. Thankfully, Racket is multi-paradigm, and so because of that, you can write Racket imperatively, functionally, object-orientedly, and make it more like how you would write a Python program. But stylistically, Racket tends to be a little bit more functional. And while you can do all the other stuff, you can write it in the way that you would write Python. It's typically written a little bit differently because of that. Another change between Racket and Python is that generally Racket discourages mutation. So I won't go into mutation in too much detail, but if you were to create, like foo.py, and then you were to do x is equal to 10, and then you would define computation, and that takes in a number, and then you return that number times 25, and then you were to do x is equal to computation of x. What you're doing is you're taking x, which equals 10, and you're mutating that variable to be the new value of that function, or something else. And this can be really handy. Certainly means that you don't have to create as many variables, but it can also bite you in the butt. So because of that, Racket tends to have the ability to take data structures and make them immutable, which means that once you set it to a value, it can't be set to a new one. So these two differences, more functional style and immutable data sets, means that Python and Racket, usually it isn't like a one-to-one between Python and Racket for anything more than a simple hello world program. But I think that's okay. And the reason is because this is about learning and growing as a programmer. And if Racket was just Python with extra parentheses around it, then I would suggest that you would learn a different programming language, because that's not how you're going to get better and see what other programming languages have to offer. And with that being said, because there are some differences between Racket and Python, it might seem frustrating at first, or confusing. You might be really irritated by all of these little parentheses, and that's okay. It took me multiple times to get into programming. It took me multiple times to get into Racket, and because it is a little bit different. But I know that if you stick with it, eventually you'll understand it, and you'll be able to programming it just as efficiently as you would with Python. And I just kind of want to highlight that whole learning process with an excerpt from a blog that I really like, that kind of highlights this process. It's called Abstraction, Intuition, and the Monad Tutorial Fallacy. So I don't know anything about Haskell, I don't know anything about monads, but I think that the message still rings true. And so it's this right here. And basically what it's saying is, Joe Haskeller is trying to learn about monads after struggling to understand them for a week, looking at examples, writing code, reading things that the people had written. He finally had an aha moment. Everything is suddenly clear, and Joe understands monads. What has really happened, of course, is that Joe's brain has fit all the details together in a higher level abstraction, a metaphor which Joe can use to get an intuitive grasp of monads. Let us suppose that Joe's metaphor is that monads are like burritos. Here's where Joe badly misinterprets his own thought process. Of course, Joe thinks, it's all so simple now. The key to understanding monads is that they are like burritos. If only I had thought of this before. The problem, of course, is that if Joe had thought of this before, it wouldn't have helped. The week of struggling through details was a necessary and integral part of forming Joe's burrito intuition. not a sad consequence of his failure upon the idea of his failure to hit upon the idea sooner. So what I'm trying to say is that the learning process is a struggle. And my video series might not be the series that makes you have that aha moment, but I hope that it is a part of your whole experience in learning to program in Racket, which is a really cool language. And even if my video series isn't the series, then I hope that you still learn something.